Today, we are diving into one of the most powerful books in all of Western philosophy, Baruch Spinoza's Ethics. Now, I know what you might be thinking, a dense 17th century text, but what if I told you it's not really an academic treatise? What if it's actually a practical guide, a manual for living a freer, happier life? Because that's exactly what Spinoza thought it was, and he kicks the whole thing off with a problem that I think we can all relate to. So, Spinoza starts with a question that is, let's be honest, deeply, uncomfortably familiar. You know the feeling, right? You know you should be working on that project, but you just keep scrolling. You know you should save money, but you click buy now anyway. Why do we do this? Why does our rational mind, the part that knows what's good for us, seem so completely powerless against the tidal wave of our impulses? Well, this is the central mystery Spinoza sets out to solve. Spinoza has a name for this state. He calls it human bondage. It's a powerful phrase. It describes a condition where we're not really in the driver's seat of our own lives. Instead, we're just passengers, getting yanked around by our emotions and whatever external events happen to trigger them. We get tossed around by hope and fear, anger and love, constantly reacting to the world instead of acting from a place of inner strength. We are, as he puts it, totally at the mercy of fortune. So, like any good doctor, Spinoza first makes a diagnosis. The fundamental problem of the human condition, as he sees it, is this state of bondage, this feeling of powerlessness in the face of our own emotional storms. Before we can even think about a cure, we have to understand the disease. And to do that, we need to find its root cause. Okay, so what's the cause? According to Spinoza, our bondage, our suffering, it all stems from a huge misunderstanding of how reality actually works. We suffer because we're ignorant. But it's a very special kind of ignorance. One that we actually cling to because, well, it feels kind of comforting. He calls it our sanctuary of ignorance. And here's the core of that diagnosis. We walk around believing that the universe was basically made for us. We think everything happens for a reason with some kind of grand purpose in mind, a purpose that usually has us at the center. We project our own human qualities, our goals, our plans, our desires, onto the vast impersonal backdrop of nature. Spinoza gives this brilliant example to show how we do this. Imagine a stone falls from a roof and kills someone. Our immediate reaction is to ask, why? We can trace the chain of physical causes, the wind blew really hard, the man just happened to be walking in that exact spot at that exact time. But pretty soon that chain of causes gets way too complicated for our brains to handle. So what do we do when we hit our limit? We just invent a purpose. We say the stone fell in order to kill the man. We call it God's will. And boom, there it is. That's the mistake in a nutshell. When we can no longer grasp the incredibly complex web of natural causes, we just stop looking for a real explanation, and we substitute a supernatural one. We say, it was just meant to be. For Spinoza, this isn't some profound statement of faith. It's a retreat. It's us running to hide in that cozy sanctuary of ignorance. And this one fundamental error is what sets us up for all our emotional suffering. All right, so if that's the wrong way to see the world, what's the right way? Spinoza's cure begins with something truly radical. He asks us to completely overhaul our understanding of the biggest concept there is, God. It's time to throw out the old ideas and embrace a completely new vision of what reality is. For Spinoza, God is not some kind of king sitting on a throne outside of the universe, looking down and pulling all the strings. No, God is the universe. God is nature. He famously uses the phrase Deus sive natura, which means God or nature. They're the same thing. God is the one, single, infinite system of reality, and it's all governed by unbreakable, unchangeable laws. It doesn't have plans, it doesn't have a purpose, it doesn't play favorites, it just is. I mean, just think about how different this is. On one hand, you have the traditional view of a personal God, separate from the world, who makes choices and has a will. On the other hand, Spinoza's God is the impersonal law of nature itself, present in everything. We aren't God's subjects. We are literally tiny parts of God, tiny parts of this infinite system. This leads to a pretty mind-bending conclusion. In Spinoza's universe, there's no such thing as chance. There are no miracles, and there's no divine purpose. Everything that happens, from a star exploding millions of light years away to you feeling a little bit sad right now,
It all unfolds from the laws of nature with the same logical necessity that the three angles of a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. It simply couldn't have been any other way.
Okay, so once we accept this new reality, this deterministic universe of pure cause and effect, we can finally start to understand ourselves. Because if we are part of nature, then our emotions are too. They aren't signs that we're flawed or sinful. They're just natural phenomena, like hurricanes or the tides. And that means they can be studied scientifically. This right here is Spinoza's revolutionary mission statement. He's basically saying, I'm going to apply the cold, hard logic of geometry to the messy, chaotic world of human feelings. He genuinely believes we can analyze our emotions, break them down into their basic parts, and figure out the laws that make them tick. And what he finds is that all of our complicated emotions are actually built from just three simple ingredients. First, there's desire. He says this is our fundamental essence. It's just the basic drive that everything has to keep on existing and to grow its own power. Second, pleasure, which is nothing more than the feeling of our power increasing. And third, pain, which is, you guessed it, the feeling of our power decreasing. And that's it. Every human emotion you've ever felt is just a variation on these three. So how do we get from those simple building blocks to huge, complex feelings like love and hate? Well, it's just simple mechanics. For Spinoza, love is just the feeling of pleasure plus the idea of an external thing that's causing it. Hate is just the feeling of pain plus the idea of an external cause. Hope? That's just an unsteady, shaky kind of pleasure that's tied to an uncertain future. And fear is that same unsteady, shaky feeling, but with pain. See? Our emotions aren't these mysterious forces. They're just simple feelings combined with our ideas about what's causing them. Okay, so let's recap. We've diagnosed the problem, which is bondage. We've identified the cause, which is our ignorance. We've laid out a whole new reality, God as nature. And we've even mapped out the mechanics of our emotions. Now we finally get to the solution, Spinoza's definition of what it really truly means to be free. Now this is a big one, so stay with me. Spinoza completely rejects the idea of free will. For him, we can't just choose to be different. Freedom isn't about breaking the chains of cause and effect. That's impossible, because we are links in that chain. No, for Spinoza, true freedom is understanding the chains. It's the power that comes from knowing exactly why you are the way you are and why you feel the things you feel. So what this gives us is two very different paths through life. There's the path of bondage, which is totally passive. On that path, we're ruled by our passions, we're controlled by external things we don't understand, and our minds are just full of confused ideas. But then there's the path to freedom, and that path is active. We are guided by reason, we act from our own nature, and our minds are filled with clear, adequate ideas about ourselves and about the world. And this, right here, is the very heart of Spinoza's therapy. Knowledge literally is power. When an emotion controls you, you are its slave. But the moment you understand that emotion, the moment you can see the whole chain of external causes and internal thoughts that produced it, you are no longer just suffering passively. You transform that passion into an action. The feeling might still be there, but it no longer owns you. And the benefits of living this way? They're huge. Spinoza promises that by understanding the necessity of everything, we can achieve a deep sense of tranquility. We can learn to face both good and bad luck with an equal mind. And because we understand that other people are also just acting out of necessity, it teaches us to hate no one, to stop blaming, and actually be helpful to others. It's a path that ultimately leads to what he calls a state of blessedness. This is Spinoza's beautiful vision of what a fully realized human being looks like. The wise person isn't emotionless, not at all, but their spirit isn't disturbed. They see themselves, they see the world, and they see God or nature as all part of one single, eternally necessary system. And that understanding brings a deep, unshakable peace, a true acceptance of reality exactly as it is. And so we end with the very last words of the Ethics. Spinoza is no fool. He knows this path is incredibly difficult. It requires us to dismantle our most deeply held beliefs about ourselves, about free will, about God. But the reward? A life of active joy, clear understanding, and profound peace is, as he says, as excellent as it is rare.
It's a challenge for sure, but one that is absolutely worth considering.